I'm going to take a look through the rules and see what new additions I can find. So they say they've reworked it from the ground up. Obviously a lot of it will be the same, essentially. And we do get the Fire and Jade Spearhead rules as well. I don't think I'm going to cover that in this video. We're just doing the main game. So yes, dice and ruling. We mentioned that they've changed wounds to health on the data card. You have how far you move, what your save is, your like objective control, which is points for you to control objective markers. That's kind of part of the main game, as you probably know, but not everyone does. Range weapons. It has one range weapon, 10-inch range. You roll a d6 for how many attacks. If you played Age of Sigmar, you know all this. But then there's like crit, auto wound, and wards, which I finally found out what they were. So the phases are also kind of colour-coded here. This bluish colour is the shooting phase and always will be seen as that. Now, reactions. I don't remember it being called reactions, but by all means correct me. I'm learning as I go through it. There tends to be a bit more back and forth options from both players rather than one player doing most of the leading and just reacting to whose go it is. Visibility is the same. I've never liked the visibility where you can see this one guy and therefore you can target 20 of his mates behind because they're all in one unit. But, you know, sort of how else are you going to do it? This is also different. Okay, so you can move around the place, shoot, and you can't go hand-to-hand combat without getting up to this 3-inch invisible shield and then charging into attack. You have to charge into attack, like in old editions. But interestingly, the you have to charge into area is infinity into the sky, like a cylinder. So you can't have your other players go over the top and sort of drop down sneakily. So there is that safety zone of, okay, we're ready to fight now, let's do it. A typical looking battlefield setup map, yep. Talks of deployment and the deployment phase, because you take it in turns to set down your models, you take it in turns to set down terrain even, which I never bothered with. But here are those colour-coded sections, the hero phase, movement, shooting, charge, combat, standard stuff if you've ever played it before. But this combat phase is slightly different from the fight phase because you can kind of activate things to do in the combat before you get to the fight. So the active player's combat phase abilities are not fighting, and then the opponent's combat phase abilities are not fighting, then you fight. You always fight last in the combat phase. Essentially these sort of special moves are allocated to each phase and you get to use them in that moment. You can do your normal move or you can actually run to make a little bit further of a move and then retreat because things might be getting a bit dire for you. It inflicts D3 mortal damage, but you can move up to your full move characteristic and you just take that D3 damage, which I think is fine. Shooting phase, you shoot people, simple. You charge in, it's a 2d6 charge to get that full 12-inch if necessary, and you must end within half of an inch of a visible enemy. This combat phase, you of course can pile in. There's diagrams and stuff coming up. So, movement. Your data card tells you how much you can move. Coherency means you can't spread your figures out all over. Coherency range is half an inch. A model can be moved over terrain features that are 1 inch or less high. Models cannot end mid-climb, so you can climb up and over things, of course. Jumping down from above. So you can jump down, it doesn't cost you the inches of movement from where you were to where you land. Pile-in moves is an extra repositioning of 3 inches, as you probably would have gathered. If you have the fly keyword, you no longer have to measure diagonally. You just measure straight across and then you're above that spot, which is a little slight difference in distance, but we're hand waving it. So shooting attacks are made with your ranged weapons, combat attacks with your melee weapons when you're up close. Called mortal damage, not mortal wounds, means you can't get out of being injured with that damage. Ward saves, okay, so the ward saves are now like an extra save really. Ward 5 here would say that for any 5 damage are coming your way and you failed your save for those, your model might say ward 5. That means you roll 1 die for every damage point you're about to take, and on a 5 or above you can ignore that wound. It just reminds me of Disgustingly Resilient in Warhammer 40k. of old. So if someone does 3 successful attacks on you which do 2 damage each, you roll 6 ward rolls and try and get a 5 or above to ignore them. A nice little table. So you attack, did you hit or did you not? If yes, you make a wound roll. Your opponent, makes a save roll, and then some of those might not be shrug-offable, and then you make a ward roll and you can reduce them even more. Strike first and strike last means pretty much that when you're taking it in turns to fight, some characters might be at strike first, some strike last. And some of your weapons have rend which stack, like there's an anti-charge and an anti-hero. So your weapon might have a rend of 2, but it also might have like an anti-monster or an anti-hero, and they add up on your ability to hit the opposition. Makes their saves harder to save. A crit 2 hits means if you get 1 damage, if an attack made with this weapon scores a critical hit, which is a 6 on the dice, it scores 2 hits instead of 1. Make a wound roll. So rolling 6 to hit across the board now means an auto success for double damage. Crit auto wound on your card means that if you hit them with a 6, then you just ignore doing the wound rolls and they go straight to making a save. Crit mortal is the mortal damage. There's no ignoring it. And I think it's really good that sounds really exciting to be rolling 6s. 1s is obviously a miss all the time, and 6s is a good hit. So the hero characters you have in your game, if this hero is within the combat range of a friendly unit that is not a hero, subtract 1 from the hit rolls to make your hero harder to hit. If the hero is infantry, they cannot be picked as a target by anyone from afar, basically. They have to be close up to get your hero, so keep him near other people. Then advanced rules, that is the magic, that is the terrain, building your armies. So now you get 4 command points at the start of every battle round. If you're the underdog, you're losing, then you get a 5th one, and these cards here are just an example of what you can spend those on. And they all disappear at the end of the battle round. You don't carry them over, so you want to be spending them if possible. And the little top right corner is how much of those it costs. Enemy charge phase. The unit can use a charge ability as if it were your charge phase, so that's in the opposition's turn. Little things like that. There's more two-way at the same time things going on here. Very strategic, which is pretty cool. Terrain informations if you wish to do that. Talks of magic, and Mystic Shield is a ward of 6, so you can ignore some of the damage. So I've seen a ward 5, but there might be a ward 4, and that's good for shrugging off damage. The usual unbinding of spells against your spell slingers. Manifestations is kind of the word for endless spells and litanies or whatever. And then I don't think we need to go into army composition too much, but the artwork's lovely. Talks about regiments and how to set them up realistically. When you're building your models, you might have different options for musicians or standard bearers. They give you different buffs, which is again a rollover. It's just nice and neat. I'm interested in the ward rolls, interested in the crit hits, etc. And 4 command points. We've been looking at the cards, and having other options in-game seems pretty cool. So it's out there for you to peruse before your new models and stuff arrive, and we'll probably look back on it as I root through the Scaventide box.